I'm Sandra Ezekwesili.
And I'm Aghogho, Oboh.
Join us 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. every weekday.
Right here.
On Hard Facts.
Hello, Lagos. Good afternoon. I am Sandra Ezekwesili, and these are your hard facts. Aghogho's over there saying a few things to Godwin.
Maku!
Yes,
You
it's
can't
good
believe
to
that
be
some people
back.
they just hear Shaku Maku and they go back to other things.
Okay, wow. Well, today is International Day for the Abolition of Slavery. And when most people hear that, they think of the slave trade and they think of people in chains. They think of people being whipped and made to pick cotton. And because of that, they will say things like slavery is over. But that's not true. Slavery is still with us. Here in Nigeria, we have various forms. I mean, you know somebody who has a so-called house help, for instance, who is a minor. That's slavery. If they have somebody who's doing domestic work for them that is not being paid, that's slavery. This so-called child marriage, it's actually child sex slavery. And then we have all the sex and the child trafficking going on around us. Slavery is still a big part of our society, and all of us need to do what we can to stand against it.
Yeah, I've been to two slave museums now, one in Calabar and then the other one in Badagry. Spent a greater part of the day there, even did a documentary, the one in Badagry. And if I say some of the most blood-calling moments, chilling moments I've ever experienced in my life has to be in a slave museum, to imagine what people went through, especially the transatlantic slave thing that happened hundreds of years ago. And the impact remains even in the Badagry area where people, incidentally, some of them who had their forebearers go far away into Europe, America, came back, and when they came back, they had to stay side by side with the people who sold them off. And I remember asking them whether they had forgiven them. That's their neighbors' forefathers who sold them off to slavery. And they, well, we're getting on along. We still have those conversations, but it's still a very dark moment. Not just in our lives, but also for the entire world. But great point you make also about contemporary times. Some of those things haven't gone anywhere.
But there's no slavery here on Hard Facts. Everyone, I here voluntarily to bring you the best insights into today's most important topics. We bring them to you, we break them down, and we give you the best facts so that you can form an informed opinion. If you missed any of our shows from last week, you can catch it online: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Nigeria Info FM. We have a great show for you today. We're starting with the big three. Sanwo-Olu will demolish houses built illegally on Lekki right-of-way. Nigerian family wants asylum in Canada to avoid FGM. And court allows the IG to hire more police officers without the Police Service Commission's approval. What's on Checkpoint, Aghogho?
Yeah, so on Checkpoint, we're going to have discussions on background check for security in the neighborhood. This is something that a lot of people don't do. They just go hire the Megiddo and, or any other one to protect their homes or their estate without doing any background check. So we're going to be speaking with someone who's done this all his entire life, background check, and ask you some interesting questions and scenarios that have played out, whether you really know who is working with you.
It's going to be great. At 6 o'clock, we're looking at World AIDS Day, which was yesterday, and we're taking the chance to assess...
At 5 o'clock.
At 5 o'clock, sorry. Taking the chance to assess Nigeria's fight against HIV and AIDS. And after 6 p.m., we'll hand you over to Rufai Useni for conversations with Rufai. We've got a great show. Between all of that, there's all of the information coming from our news desk from the worlds of business, sports, entertainment. But let's get right into the big three.
Stay right here on the Big Three on 99.3 Info. This is the Big Three.
The Big Three on Hard Facts.
On 99.3 Nigeria Info.
All right, Lagos, you know what to expect on the Big Three. Stories that everyone's talking about right now. Who's to blame for illegal construction? That's our first story, because someone will demolish houses built illegally on Lekki right-of-way. Is female genital mutilation a good reason to get asylum abroad? That's because a Nigerian family wants asylum in Canada to avoid FGM. And who should have the power to recruit the police? We're asking that question because a court has allowed the IG to hire more police officers without the Police Service Commission's approval. Our first story, the Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has said his government will demolish all buildings on the Lekki Regional Road right-of-way. The right-of-way was set aside for the construction of the regional road, which is meant to relieve traffic on Lekki-Ekpe Expressway. Governor Sanwo-Olu has blamed obstruction of the right-of-way for some of the flooding in Lekki, while experts have also blamed the lack of relief roads for the heavy traffic in the area. Governor Sanwo-Olu said the Ministry of Physical Planning will be asked to demand building approval proof from every building owner on the right-of-way, and those who cannot produce it will be marked for demolition. The governor, however, also left room for dialogue, saying those who have been found to have broken the law will need to tell government how they intend to rectify the situation. I'm sure a lot of landlords are shaking right now, Aghogho.
So on the one hand, the question the governor is asking, people will also be pointing fingers back at the state planning authorities who act instead of the governor also too, because the question is, if you have two major thinking around development, which is the master plan, which is made reference to saying that the master plan has been compromised because people have built along the right of way and they should show their approval. If they have approval, it's an indictment on state authorities, because how on earth did they get an approval if the master plan has already indicated that this is a right of way? You shouldn't have approval in the first in the instance. The second part is the development control part, which the governor hasn't addressed here, because how on earth is it that you've had people build on the right of way right under the very noses of the development authority, whether at the state or the local government level? So those are questions people are going to be putting back to the government. This is not just only a problem affecting Lekki, but the entire state. It's a mess in terms of what planning standards are being followed. There's any in the first instance. So people are going to be asking questions. So if you do this to the people on Lekki who are built along the right of way, all of the other areas on Lagos, on the mainland, on the island, are you going to enforce the same rule of thumb?
And we've talked about this right-of-way obstruction so many times here on Hard Facts. And every time we talk about it, the experts tell us that it will be very difficult for a private person to take over land in a right-of-way, to sell it, to build on it, without some government officials being aware and possibly being bribed or co-opted. So it's a very valid question that Aghogho is asking this evening. After demolishing these buildings, what next? Should efforts be made to find the government officials who may have given the builders permission? And then there's also the other interesting thing that the governor said. He said the ministry should inspect the approval papers of anyone who has built on right of way. So it means that the governor is very aware that some of these people may have legitimately not known that it was a right of way. They may have gone through the proper channels. They may have gotten what they thought was legitimate land and legitimate building permits. So what happens to those people? They've been defrauded. Will they just have to bear the loss from the fraud, or will there be some sort of, mechanism to catch the people that defrauded them, to get some compensation? I mean, I think the people who, in quotes, sold the land, imagine the guts that someone has to have to claim ownership of land on a right of way to sell it to somebody else. So there are so many huge questions, and you can answer that for us when you give us a call. You can start answering right now via Facebook. Facebook is Nigeria Info Lagos, Nigeria Info 99.3. That's our Facebook. Who do you think is most to blame for this issue of illegal construction on rights of way? Again, Facebook is Nigeria Info 99.3. Our second story are protests in Canada in support of a Nigerian family facing deportation. The Bakare family has tried to receive asylum in Canada by claiming that their daughters are at risk of female genital mutilation here in Nigeria. The family, in fact, claims that FGM is the reason they fled Nigeria. The Canadian government has rejected their asylum application and issued them a deportation order, while Mr. Bakare insists that he will be unable to protect his daughter daughters from relatives who want to mutilate them in Nigeria. Interesting case, Aghogho.
The story has been getting a lot of traction online since it broke. Also internationally too, because it was called from the CBC, which is the partner to CNN, which is their own BBC in Canada. And the different angles I've also heard from Nigeria. People saying, for example, is FGM still a question? But interestingly, the argument about whether FGM is still a problem is just the ridiculousness of what they have claimed that their lives are threatened if they go to Canada. But it throws into light the bigger problem we're having with Nigerians who are going to Canada through the United States. This has become like the biggest open secret, claiming everything from FGM to being prosecuted because of their sexuality, to Boko Haram, even though they've lived all their lives in Lagos. And it goes on and on, And I think also, too, that a number of people are saying that maybe the Canadian authorities are beginning to get a wind of what is going on, because if we track back a couple of months ago, the Canadian authority had asked that the Americans put some eyes on what is going on because of Nigerians getting the American visa and then spend a couple of days in the United States, go to New York, go upstate, and they just walk over the line, and then Canada, and they're arrested for illegal entry into Canada. And the rest, of course, is history. Many of them do get the asylum through. And so this behind the I know a lot of people are saying, why are you saying this thing on the radio? But this is how we found out many Nigerians are beginning to find their way into Canada. And it's a great cause for concern. But what I've seen online is what people are saying, this attempt to want to really tar Nigeria in black just to say that I want to get asylum.
But are they tarring Nigeria in black? Female genital mutilation is a big problem in Nigeria. Yeah. It's a big, big problem. The statistics are high, humongous even. Yeah. And we talk about that all the time on our various shows, including the glass ceiling. Glass ceiling is every Wednesday, by the way. But aside from that, this story has so many big parts. There's immigration, there's FGM, there's human rights, there's Nigeria. And of course, it is sparked, all of that debate, and then all the people who are not willing to believe the Bakares story. The Bakares are saying that they had to run away from Nigeria because their family members wanted to perform FGM on their daughters. Some Nigerians are saying that story does not ring true for them. They're saying that there's no way extended family can impose FGM on a couple and their children, especially if the father has said that he doesn't want it. And then other people have said, okay, look, you cannot judge this case that easily. You have cases where family and community leaders can put a lot of pressure on a couple. We spent how many weeks on the glass ceiling talking about pressure on couples to have children, for instance. So it's that same kind of thing. So perhaps it's possible that these people feel that they have no choice. Why didn't they go to Ghana? Ghana is just next door. Eh? Okay, so it's up to you who's listening. Do you believe the Bakares? Do you think that there's a situation where parents cannot protect their children from FGM, their daughters from FGM, and they need to flee the country? Have you had experience resisting FGM, or have you witnessed it? Who has the final say? Does this story ring true for you? Again, Facebook is Nigeria Info Lagos, Nigeria Info 99.3 Lagos. That's our Facebook. We're going through the three stories because we have the guys from Rally Academy joining us from 3:45. A final story: a federal high court in Abuja has thrown out the Police Service Commission's case to stop the IG recruiting 10,000 constables. The PSC had claimed that by law it was the only body with the right to recruit or dismiss police officers. This was in response to the order from the presidency to the IG of police to recruit 10,000 so-called constables for community policing. And the High Court in Abuja has said that the PSC's case lacks merit. Meanwhile, the Punch is reporting that the Ministry for Police Affairs has just received a fresh instruction from the presidency to recruit 400,000 additional police officers. Oh, quite the thing.
This is a conversation that's going to drag on for a long while. When we continue to dig in the ramifications of what this judgment means and whether the squabble between
it will be interesting to get our hands on the full judgment.
Yes, and how it's going to affect the recruitment of the police and whether
do you think
it's put to bed.
Do you think they'll take it to the Supreme Court? PSC?
There's a likelihood that could happen also too. I've heard that commentary on the sidelines, but still early days. I look forward to hearing what the PSC and the IG will say. But unfortunately, what suffers is the recruitment of policemen because time waits for no one. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see if we can take a few calls. Our numbers are 01277 0993, 01277 1993, 01277 2993, and 01277 3993. Do you think the PSC should have exclusive rights to recruit police, or do you think that all hands should be on deck? We're asking that particular question because this is a matter that has been on for a while. We had Frank Mba on the show, for instance, a few weeks ago, and he said, I remember, that he wasn't going to get dragged into the controversy of that particular matter. So we're wondering what Akin Jimo has to say in calling us from Aghogho. Ajegunle, I'm thinking. Hello, Akin.
Latif.
Oh, Latif. Welcome, Latif.
Okay, man. Okay,
Yes.
thanks for go ahead.
Go ahead. You're live on the show.
Okay. Now, if about the one,
Hello?
this one,
Oh, quite unfortunately, your line is breaking up, so you have to call us back. Hello? Okay. Something's going on with the phone lines. Okay. All right. Something's going on with the phone lines. Well, if we get our hands on the full judgment of the High Court, it's probably a conversation we'll have on checkpoints, because the court is saying, Aghogho, that the Police Service Commission's argument lacks merit. The PSC was basing their argument on the laws that established them and the police force. And according to those laws, the PSC has the exclusive rights to recruitment of officers. And in the IGP's response, he said that the new exercise was not recruitment, but employment.
Exactly. the judge, Justice Echo, defines the meaning of appointment to include recruitment. Does not apply to the police force. Since it's not a civil service. So
it's quite a thing. The PSC is saying it's the same thing. So it's be interesting to see whether the High Court agreed with the IG that recruitment and employment are not the same.
And then said rather than saying that the IGP was trying to usurp its powers, they were usurping the IGP's powers. So, interesting judgment. I look forward to hearing what and how this is going to go on. But that definitely this is not going to be over by a far stretch of the imagination.
Because you have to remember, of course, that one thing the PSC had asked the court for was to maintain status quo until all the cases and appeals were done. Because imagine what happens if the IG continues the recruitment based on this judgment, but the Supreme Court later rules that the recruitment was illegal. That's 10,000 people who will be fired, then recruited, then fired again. So we're keeping our eye on that story, and the more we know, the more you will know as well. Temple is in Aja. Hello, Temple.
hello, Sandra.
Good afternoon. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. Well, the state government, people building wrongly on the if they are not given chances to build. The state government will see all these things, not do anything until when the problem comes. Like if you come to Aja, you see a lot of people building on the so-called drainage that we have here. And government will not do anything. It's seriously affecting. So they need to look. They come to those places and collect land use charges. So who's approving for the building which they are collecting land use charges? And nobody is doing anything.
Great point. Thanks for calling, Temple. We've got Austin in Surulere. Hello, Austin. You blame the Constitution for what, Austin?
No, I'm not blaming the Constitution. What I'm simply saying is that what one has to look at is the enabling law, the law that sets up PSC, Public Service Commission, Police Service Commission, rather. So that's what we should be looking at. It's not a matter of what anyone thinks about it. It's a matter of what does the law setting up PSC, where, what does it say the PSC can do? And what does it also say the police IG can do? So that is what we should be looking at. So, but in giving this judgment, I want to believe that the court had actually looked at the enabling law that set up PSC as to what the PSC can do and what the IG can do. So, because there ought to be no conflict as to what each person can do. We have roles that have been defined for the IG and roles that have also been defined for the PSC. So, I think that is what is crucial.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Austin, for calling. And that's the last call we'll take on the Big Three today. We'll hand you over to the guys from Raleigh Academy. When we come back, Checkpoint takes the airways and we'll find out how much you know about that person who's working for you. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili.
And I'm Aghogho Oboh.
Hard facts will be right back.